Father Simon and the gathered mediators between a higher power and humanity.
That's us.
That's a first.
It is, that's brand new. As this tale took place when I was in my early 20s, and I'm now approaching 60, I think the parties concerned will be well past offering forgiveness. However, my wife has been bugging me for years to confess, and now seems like a good a time as any. This confession goes back to my mature student days in the early 80s, when I still had hair, I rode a motorbike, and I lived the life of Riley in a house full of single gentlemen. I don't think we talked about it like that in the 80s, but anyway. It was a wet Saturday evening, and much to my flatmate's annoyance, I was trying to ignore the invitation to a boring friend's fancy dress party in Heaton in Newcastle. They were annoyed because they wanted me to go as a sacrificial lamb, mainly to assuage their guilt because they weren't going. They were going to watch Match of the Day with a few beers instead. So keen were they for me to go, in fact, that my housemates even got me a fancy dress costume together. It had been decided that I was to go as one of the main characters from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And to be fair, they'd done a great job of putting the costume together. Out of excuses, unable to avoid it no longer, I got changed into my costume and set off on my motorbike for what was bound to be the dullest event on Tyneside of all time. Unfortunately, it was a drizzly night, and the roads were wet even. And as I went round a corner, I hit a manhole cover, made extra slippery with spilt diesel.
Ooh.
I know, Bobby's wincing already.
Yeah.
Suddenly, the bike slid from under me, and the throttle jammed open as I slid along the road with my left leg trapped under the bike, only coming to a stop as I hit a bollard in the middle of the road. Dazed for a few seconds, I then came round to the sight of two ladies with fresh blue rinse hairdos approaching me in a metallic gold Vanden Plas Metro. Remember them? At the sedate pace associated with such vehicles. I was in quite a bit of pain, but I soon forgot about this as I saw the ladies' totally horrified expression and realised they weren't looking at me. Instead, their eyes were fixed on a decapitated and helmeted human head which was rolling past their vehicle. Now, at this point, I should probably reveal that my housemates had dressed me up as Zaphod Beeblebrox, the two-headed character from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. You see, using a latex old man mask with two ping-pong balls painted as eyes, they then stuffed a jumper inside the mask to make the required second head, and I'd stuffed it inside my spare full-face crash helmet before setting off. So yeah, two crash helmets on. That can't be allowed, can it? You can't go for a motorcycle ride in fancy dress and two heads. The aforementioned head had come loose in the crash and was now rolling in front of the two old ladies in the car. It was about this time that the pain in my leg disappeared and I began laughing my other head off. The poor women looked terrified, with mouths wide open, and I could hear screams emanating from their sedate micro sedan. And the next thing I knew, the driver put her foot to the floor, span her front wheels, and roared off down the road.
No!
A Vanden Plas Metro has never performed this manoeuvre, ever.
Off, bye!
Sorry about your head.
Yeah, best of luck.
I was still laughing when onlookers came to my aid, lifting the heavy bike off me, and also chuckling as one of them collected my severed head. Before the shock set in, I rode the few yards home, called my girlfriend, who happened to be a nurse, and awaited for her to return from her doctors and nurses' fancy dress party. No word of a lie. Now, imagine if you're a nurse and you go to a doctors and nurses party. Yeah. That's exciting. She arrived 20 minutes later with my brother-in-law, who was a doctor, and a six-pack of strong lager. Down that and brace yourself, he said, as they proceeded to pick gravel out of my knee. Ooh. So I suppose it's like anaesthetic qualities, and they were medical staff. So, Father Simon, I seek forgiveness for the emotional damage I must have inflicted on those poor elderly ladies, who surely are no longer with us, and for nothing to do with me, and for my callous disregard of their welfare. On the bright side, I never got to the party either, for which I'm very thankful. Please extend to me the grace within your power to give, and allow me to salve my guilty conscience as I approach my imminent old age. That must have been a pretty stunning sight, actually. A two-headed motorcyclist and coming off and losing one head. Anyway, it's a nasty accident. But what was interesting is, you know, the brain kicks in and goes, no, actually, I know that hurts, but this is funny, and you're going to forget the pain because this is funnier than your pain. Just to Bobby from the Priory.
Well, what's interesting about this is you talk about your blatant disregard for their emotional state after that accident. That's you caring about them. What's interesting, although traumatic for them to come upon the accident, which they thought was genuine, and of course there was no intention. You didn't stage it. It was just an accident, kind of waiting to happen in some ways. But they didn't stop and take care of you.
I guess they might have thought, what good can we do?
Well, call an ambulance.
It's all over, Doris. Let's get out of here.
We can't help here.
Gotta go.
Well, yes, you can. You know, you can just, you can cradle the head.
It's all right.
I've got some masking tape. Yeah,
There's an ambulance on the way, Roach.
Make sure the other head. So I'm saying, make sure the other head's all right. I'm just really surprised that they drove off and didn't actually call anyone. So actually,
Just hang on a bit.
You are.
We'll find the rest of you.
You're forgiven, Crow, because I don't think you did anything wrong. I think the old ladies in the Vandenplas actually should be asking forgiveness. They drove off.
Putting the crash helmet on was inspired, brother.
Yes, it was, and I share his disdain for fancy dress parties. I can't be doing with them at all. But and I thought when they said they were going to dress up as a character, the easiest one is obviously is to go as Arthur Dent, because you just have to put a dressing gown on, don't you?
But and have a towel.
Absolutely. And so going with Zaphod with the two heads and putting another crash helmet on is inspired. And yes, that has made me giggle. So I'm definitely going to